Hello there. We're back, aren't we?
We're back. We're back.
Okay.
We're here.
Yeah. So we're going to talk today about the whole concept of independence and dependence and codependence and counterdependence. The dependent word. So we don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to be able to go too deep into those things, but we're going to be able to go deep enough to help you to make some important distinctions and get some clarity that might be useful to you in your relationships and in your life. So I'd like to begin, I've already begun, but I'd like to continue with a very short poem by the poet Robert Creeley. And it goes like this. Love comes quietly, finally, drops around me, on me, in the old way. What did I know, thinking myself able to go alone all the way?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of sums it up. So you don't need to listen to the rest of this if you got the point of that poem, which for some of us is much more necessary to remember than others. And in case you haven't guessed what it is, it's about acknowledging our need to experience varying degrees of dependence in our lives, that we are fundamentally social creatures, which means that we are dependent upon others on a network that hopefully will provide mutual support. So that network can be very small, like one other person, or preferably it can be extended to include other people.
More is better.
More is definitely better, but quality is more important than quantity. Mm-hmm. Like the distinction that some people make between having acquaintances and having friends. Mm-hmm. There's a difference. And the main difference in those distinctions is that acquaintances are people with whom you have a comfortable, although usually somewhat limited in depth, relationship with. But they're people that you know on a level maybe somewhat superficial, maybe a little deeper, but friendship is deeper, and partnership is deeper than that. And the thing that creates the depth is this quality of mutuality, which is that there isn't one person who is providing assistance or aid or support all the time to the other one. But there's a feeling of reciprocal respect between two or more people in which both feel that they can rely upon and depend upon others to really be there with them and for them.
Mm-hmm. So I want to give the definition from the dictionary for dependence, because it says reliance on someone or something. Now that's neutral. That's not a negative definition. But somehow dependence and dependency has gotten a bad reputation. In our country, independence is worshipped, and dependence can be considered by a lot of people as something pathological or weak. It's like it's a dirty word, something bad. And if you've listened to us enough, you know that we're in the business of trying to save you some trouble. It was a long time, fortunately years ago, before I really understood that dependence is not only a bad thing, it's better than neutral. It's
not only not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing, it is a wonderful thing. And it took a while for me to understand. I had to have some important teachers in my life that I trusted say, every relationship that's worth anything has a component of healthy dependency. We get together with the people that we're romantically involved with and our deepest friends who become our confidants because they enrich our life, because they have strengths that we don't have, that we complement each other. And it's that interdependence that's good for both people in that kind of reciprocal relationship. When I think back to the early days when I was with Charlie, I had critic attacks all the time.
You might want to explain what that means.
Critic
for people who aren't
attacks.
familiar with the term.
Inside my own mind, my inner critic used to give me a hard time. It used to judge me. It criticized me. It beat up on me. And it would say things like, oh, you're so weak. You are so strung out on him. What is the matter with you? Why don't you stand on your own 2 feet? Why, when he goes away for a week, do you miss him so badly?
Okay, I just want to clarify something.
That's the critic talking.
Yeah, there isn't an actual being in your mind, though, in your head. If we drilled into it, we wouldn't see something called an inner critic. These are thoughts that you're having about yourself and judgments
negative
that,
thoughts
that you're making. Okay.
in my psyche.
Just want to clarify that.
And I believe them. And the culture also supports those kind of beliefs. Like it's a little disgusting or a lot disgusting to be dependent on somebody else. And you and I colluded with that belief that it was too needy on my part, that I was insecure, that I was neurotic and unhealed.
But there is such a thing as being too needy.
Too needy
Yeah.
and too dependent. But I'm saying that some of us, many of us, are not too needy and too dependent. We just haven't really concluded that we have been at effect of the culture's dictates that elevates independence and denigrates dependence.
So let's just rewind a little bit. I want to say something about what, because what you're saying really makes a lot of sense, and it's very appropriate, not just to you, but to plenty of us in the world.
We all need people.
We live in a culture that does kind of demonize dependency and elevates independency, idealizes that. And so when we talk about neediness, that's distinct from dependence. Neediness really has to do with assigning responsibility to other people for your well-being, making them the ones upon whom you have to turn to provide yourself with the experiences that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a difference between having allies and supports in your life who can be there with you and for you. But if you're making them responsible for providing you the experiences that you want, rather than supporting you in creating those experiences, then you're really going to be in a lot of trouble. And so is the relationship, because they will always fail you in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Just because it's not their job, it's not their responsibility. They don't even have the power to know what it is that you need. And sometimes you don't either. So this is a really important distinction to make. Who is it that you're holding responsible for this?
Right. And so there's some distinctions that need to be made, and not to be too blasé about just, I'm fine, I'm not overly dependent, take a look and see. But don't mistake the normal, natural need to be validated, to be seen, to be heard, to have believing eyes, to be, acknowledged. These are part of normal, natural, healthy, wholesome relationship. And to make those distinctions. Because to the degree that we buy into the prevailing myth, we may be busy organizing our lives and living more separate from other people, which can be isolating and lonely. And we rip ourselves off of having the chance to have a person in our life who has strengths that we don't have, who has knowledge we don't have, who has skills that we don't have. We may be busy, trying to do without that rather than have our life enhanced by throwing in together and utilizing each other's strengths and learning from each other's strengths. And when we were busy making it wrong to be more dependent on each other, I think we didn't work in harmony with each other, utilizing each other's strengths as much as we do in recent decades. And I'm grateful that we got past the belief that it was somehow wrong to lean on another person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not a matter of either being independent or dependent. There's a whole range of possibilities that are on that spectrum. And on one, at the end of one extreme, there's the person who feels that they have demonized the part of themselves that does have needs for support, for assistance, for aid in some ways in their lives to make their life easier. And what they're busy doing is trying to prove that they don't need anybody. And if you know somebody like that, or if you're somebody like that, chances are pretty good that that is a person who has denied or is rejecting or judging their need for reciprocity and support in their relation, in their life. Mm-hmm. They've made that wrong. That tends to be more a guy's thing than a woman's thing, because in this culture, it is somewhat more acceptable for a woman to have that predisposition. And that's not something that women tend to be judged negatively for as much as men. Like you're expected as a man to be independent. You're expected to not need particularly emotional support, which is often one of the main things that attracts other people to us and that attracts us to them. That the sense that this person can provide me on an emotional level, not just a physical level, with needs that I have in my life. And so when somebody refuses to accept the legitimacy of that natural, like you use that term, natural need for that all humans have, we're social beings, we all have to rely in certain ways on other people. There's no such thing as a self-made man. I mean, look at that phrase. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. None of us are self-made. None of us have lives that we have on our own without any support or assistance from anybody created. I mean, there's literally countless people who along the way have provided us with assistance to sustain ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That's who we are. It's how it is. Mm-hmm. And then on the other end of the spectrum, that's just counter-dependent. What I just referred to, that's what we call that counter-dependence. On the other end of the spectrum is what is known as codependence, which is what I was saying earlier. When we're making somebody else, we're responsible for fulfilling our needs, and then we create relationships in which there is reciprocity, because we are leaning on somebody to meet our needs, to take care of us in certain ways, but chances are very, very high that they're doing the same thing with other needs that they have themselves. So there's no such thing as a codependent person in a relationship. There is a codependent relationship where both people in different ways are overly relying or making responsible the other person.
So you're talking about this continuum, and I think that's a good way to look at it, that there are extremes, and either end, the counterdependence, the hyper-independence, is not living a wholesome life. Neither is the end where you're overly dependent and you're codependent. The winning combination is the interdependence. Those people who are interdependent, they can slide up and down the spectrum. So they can come together close, reveal their inner life to each other, reveal their unhealed wounds, their fears. They can tell the truth about their needs.
Also the positive stuff too, their desires, their accomplishments, their ambitions.
And their wildest dreams.
Yeah.
And they can expose their inner self and their inner life. And they can come close and be confidants with each other. They can be believing eyes for each other. They can validate the other person's gifts to give in the world, how much they have to make as a unique contribution that they might not even be aware of themselves.
Yeah.
And they can go to the other end, and they can let go, and they can be free to be their unique self, and they don't have to be together and joined at the hip, and they can do their separate lives. They could take separate vacations. They could have separate belief systems, even different values. Doesn't have to be divisive, because they can come together and be very close and merge, and they can stand on their own 2 feet. I want to give some acknowledgement to Seymour Boorstein, because years ago he used an image that I have drawn on many times. It's a strong image that sometimes they push our wheelchair and sometimes we push their wheelchair. There are going to be times when we're going to feel weakened, we're going to feel confused, we're going to feel lost, and to have somebody that we can lean on in those dark times is wonderful. And that when we are reconstituted and when we're healed and when we're stronger from whatever challenge or illness or injury, then we can be there for the other person. And that's healthy dependency.
Yeah, that's one of the main things that characterizes really great relationships, is that each person has the ability and the fluidity and the flexibility to be able to move back and forth on that spectrum. Because there are times when we really do have to take responsibility for something and really accept that it is not only within our power, but it is within our responsibility to do certain things, to take certain actions, regardless of other people's opinions or judgments. Sometimes we've got to be willing to take that kind of an assertive stand. And then sometimes we need to kind of collapse in literally the arms or in the care of another person when we're feeling drained or depleted or exhausted or just in need of someone to temporarily take care of ourselves, of us. So it's the ability to be able to move freely along that spectrum. I can be whoever I need to be in that time, even though it may go against some of my judgments about who I think I should be. That it's okay and it's necessary to be able to turn myself over to the care of another person when for some reason I just don't feel like I've got what I need myself to provide that. And we all get at times to that point, and that's where a healthy, solid relationship makes, I mean, it can literally make the difference between life and death.
Yes, because if people buy in big time to the myth of independence, they're isolating themselves. They're so busy proving they don't need anybody that they can become isolated and disconnected from others, which is a very severe form of stress in our culture, and it's rampant. It's an epidemic. And people don't even feel like they have one confidant in their life that they can turn to because they've been so busy trying to organize their life in an independent way. And people are dying of loneliness, the stress of loneliness. So I know that anybody who's worked with us, watched our videos, worked with us in counseling, come to our workshop, read our books, knows that we're about self-actualization, using the potential that we each have, our vast potential to flourish, to grow, to heal from any past traumas, childhood, adult traumas, to heal from those, and to maximize our potential. We need to have, healthy need to have people that we feel we can turn to, that we can lean on, not just to make our life easier, although that's nice, but also to maximize this growth potential, to utilize the seeds of who we can be, that it's that mutual dependence, it's that interdependence that waters the seeds to allow us to grow and flourish and thrive. Mm-hmm. So I want people to see what a big deal this is. Mm-hmm. This is a big deal, not a go effect of the prevailing view. To find out what's true for you and to live out of that truth in your own life.
And it may sound kind of paradoxical, but in a funny way, it takes courage to acknowledge and accept responsibility for needing other people.
Right.
Because so many of us have experienced disappointment, pain, letdown in relationships, sometimes going all the way back to childhood.
Don't want to risk it.
In which people that we thought would be there for us weren't.
Right.
They maybe they weren't not only there for us in the way we needed them, but maybe when we turned to them, they exploited our vulnerability. They took advantage of us. They hurt us. They took something from us in some way. And so when we've had experiences like that, it makes it really hard to accept your need for the, support from other people or connection with them, because inevitably we associate that with the fear of pain, with the loss of safety. That kind of vulnerability can be terrifying to a person or to people who have experienced being wounded in that way emotionally without fully recovering from that. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't mean that if you've had those kinds of experiences that, you're never going to be able to integrate both sides of the dependence equation. But it does mean that you may have some work to do in order to be able to find the strength or the courage or the intention to accept and own that part of you that really does, like everybody else, need other people.
Right. So my closing remarks are about personally acknowledging you, thanking you for the work that you've done to not buy into the myth. Because during the times when we both bought into the myth, it added salt to the wound of me judging myself with my inner critic attacks, that I was somehow defective, that I was a second, that I was less of a person because of what we know now is normal dependency needs. And when you were denying them in yourself, your denial of your dependency would get projected on me.
Yeah.
And then we colluded about that. And it was damaging to our relationship during that time.
Yeah.
So thank you for breaking free from the myth. We both have done some significant work. And when we were able to escape that heavy load that it put on us, I feel like we really sprang up to a level of well-being that we had not been able to enjoy before we got out of that belief system. Took some work to do it. So thank you for doing that work.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And in a future Facebook Live talk soon, we'll let you know. We are going to be talking about what that work actually is, what it involves, that work of recovering that lost sense of self that causes us to fear that level of reliance, to fear the pain that we're afraid might come from that.
So we could pick up this thread in next week's presentation, because the next week's topic is breaking free from unskillful patterns.
Yep.
Not just the denial of our dependency needs, but there are all kinds of patterns that we get caught in pretty unconsciously. And that when we are mindful and we pay attention and we catch ourselves red-handed, playing out those patterns, acting out those patterns, there's a choice point there. So we're going to inquire into this some more. Just want to give the listening audience a heads up that we are going to be teaching at 1440 Multiversity the end of February, a weekend workshop. And then in March, we're going to be teaching a 5-day at Esalen. It's on our website. It's on the 1440 website. It's on the Esalen website. And you can call us if you have any questions about the class.
Tell them what the name of the website is.
Yeah, the website at Esalen?
No, our website.
Our website is Bloomwork, www.bloomwork.com. So there are ways that you can find out on the website. And don't hesitate to call if you want to talk to one of us about what the courses are about and whether they're a right fit for you.
You can depend upon us in a good way.
Okay, all the best.